Welcome to our webinar today on Web3. I'd like to introduce you David. So David is the research director at Protocol Labs. He's a core engineer, author, and co-author of many of the protocols that serve as a base for the main Web3 stack, such as IPFS, libp2p, IPLD, multi-formats, and many others. Has formal training in networks engineering with an MSc in peer-to-peer systems. David has taken multiple parallel paths simultaneously while founded multiple large-scale international conferences like LXJS, Container Camp, IPFS Camp, Arctic.js, and more. He has contributed and authored hundreds of open source software packages, has organized large entrepreneurship programs like Startup Scholarship, Bet Delta App, among others, and he has lectured at the University of Lisbon with a course built from the ground up on modern web development. He has also served as a volunteer for many organizations like I3E, Kairos, Google, and Computer Society. David is passionate about innovation, first principles thinking, and finding better ways of overcoming the challenges left by the old. Today, David focuses on accelerating the innovation pipeline, helping hundreds of teams overcome their technical, organizational, and operational challenges. David, welcome. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me and for such a generous intro. Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be part of this webinar and also the kickoff that we are doing here today.
Hey, it's a real pleasure to have you. David, I'd like to ask you to, before anything else, to talk a little bit about Protocol Labs, about what you do, and the things that you're better known for, Falcoin and IPFS. So if you can kind of give a brief overview of that, that would be great.
Of course. And so Protocol Labs is, as we call it, a research, development, and deployment lab. And the reason why it's a RD&D lab is because ultimately what we identified is that there is a huge gap between innovation and product. And often the ideas that go through the academic pipeline, from ideas to papers to even sometimes prototypes, actually don't see the light of the day on the product side, and therefore don't get to be used by end users. And so Protocol Labs is an R&D lab that focuses on accelerating this innovation pipeline from ideas to working code to equipping users with the new superpowers, as we say. And so in order to, and with this approach and with this line of thinking, we have developed many other protocols that today are widely used by this Web3 revolution, as we call it. And one of them that is very famous is IPFS. So it's the interplanetary file system. And the other one, and so IPFS is a peer-to-peer file system that is used to distribute data, to make data distribution and sharing very efficient, but also censorship resistant, to work in offline scenarios, to work in remote areas, and so on. And the reason, like the interplanetary name, is an homage to J.C.R. Licklider when he envisioned the intergalactic network that led to the internet. And it fits the project very well, because once you solve the problems, the technical problems at the interplanetary scale, you also solve the problems at the local and planet scale as well. And then Falcoin is what we call the persistence layer for IPFS. So once you can share data with your friends, with your peers, with your clients, with other businesses, then you want to make sure that there is a guarantee that the data that you care about stays available. And Falcoin offers a storage network, a storage market, that a simple explanation would be to think of it as Airbnb, where instead of like putting your extra bedroom or your extra house to rent, you put your extra space on your hard drive to rent, and others can use it and trust that is stored securely in this decentralized network.
Fantastic. Yeah. Interplanetary file system is certainly not short on ambition. David, so why don't we start by defining what we're talking about? So we're here to talk about the Web3. Different people define it in different ways. So tell me, what's the Web3 and how is it different from what we already have?
Yeah, and the reality is, like, the Web3 is moving so fast and like shaping and changing shape so fast that it's very common to have like multiple interpretations. And so I'll give you kind of like my own and ultimately like Protocol Labs interpretation of like what is Web3. And given I have like some some materials laying around. I'll just like pull it up because I think it's going to help the viewers to get a better picture, right? And so
Sure.
the question is like, what is Web3? And so like, why 3 and not 2 or not 5, right? And so Web3 stands for Web 3.0, as in the third version. And like to get to Web3 is important to understand like ultimately the origins, right? So like first comes the internet, like it connects all the humans on the planet. It creates this beautiful neural network like that we use to share information with each other. After we got connected, like different types of platforms got built, and the one that kind of like got really widespread was HTTP as a protocol to transfer data. And on top of it was the Web 1.0. The Web 1.0 was also known as the read-only static web. You could go to a web page, acquire new information, new knowledge, like acquire new abilities, new skills to develop your job. But ultimately, it was a very consumer focus, like very like absorb information from some producer without giving you the opportunity to interact with it. Then Web 2 came along, and apologies, I'm missing. Oh no, it's here. Web 2 came along, and this is the read-write interactive web, right? And so there is this famous keynote from one of the worldwide developer conferences from Apple, where Steve Jobs is on stage demoing how you can book a flight on a web app, and at the time that was mind-blowing. But like today, that is our bread and butter, right? Like we book hotels, flights, accommodation, buy our groceries, all kinds of stuff. And so this Web 2.0 is this revolution, an evolution that we are still living. Like we still rely on it to connect to our loved ones, to run our businesses, and so on. And so the Web 3 is when we get to add to trust and verifiability to what we know as Web 2. So Web 2 ultimately had some shortcomings on its design, where there was a lot of requirements to trust centralized providers that have authority to dictate like what is true, what is the correct information, what is not, and limited the interaction between direct peers. So if I wanted to create a business without having to interact with a third party, with a cloud provider, with a payment processor, with some other third party that could intermediate exchange of value with my clients, I could not do that with Web 2. And Web 3 comes to add that. And so this trust and verify can be expanded to ends, right? Like it means that like you can exchange value of services in a way that is verified. You don't need an escrow, you don't need a payment processor in the middle. You can just verify that the exchange that you are doing is the correct one. Again, doesn't require a third party, and you have a way to demonstrate that like I am indeed paying for the service that you provide, and like this is possible to demonstrate that is true. And I'm sure we'll dive into maybe some technical details of how this is possible. But like what also it creates is the opportunity, a platform for a lot of innovation. Because anyone can create their own service, and everyone can add their own twist, and anyone can create their own rules. It creates these open services that very often are open source, so anyone can read the source code and validate, in fact, the spirit of the service. And if you disagree with the service, or if you disagree with the platform, you always have the option to fork. You always have the option to give it your own spin. And in the end, if you create something that is better for your users, they will move to your platform. If not, they will stick with the other ones. Typically, this also means that there is like permissionless entry, like anyone can join, independent of their geographic position, their status, their certifications, like anyone can join Web3 services. And there's a ways to incentivize that the infrastructure, the core infrastructure, the data storage, the communications, the compute, everything essentially can be incentivized, creating these subsidy-like forms of reward attribution that enable the networks to operate without requiring a centralized provider. So yeah, like this is kind of like a very high level bird's eye view of like what Web3 and where it came from.
Okay, so now that we're on the same page, I mean, we've had the appearance of Bitcoin back in 2009, then we had the Ethereum smart contracts in 2013, then the term Web3 first being mentioned, I think, in 2014, so shortly after. And now we've seen the boom of Web3 development. So as you mentioned, it's almost difficult kind of to keep track because a lot is happening. So can you give us a glimpse of kind of what's happening and what are for you the most interesting areas being developed?
Yeah, and so and I guess like one useful visual that can help all the viewers is because like Web3 is very like it's a very wide scope. And one way to think about Web3 is like these three verticals, like the distributed web component, the blockchain, or public verifiable ledgers, and semantic data, like being able to interlink and interdepend of different data models that exist in different services without having to replicate the functionality over again. And so I'll speak more for the first two. On a distributed web, and like the importance of distributing back the web, because ultimately the Web 1.0 was distributed. Like you could host your own server at your home and provide websites to your neighbors or to your people from all over the world. Is because like as I was saying or alluding to earlier, is like the Web 2 and all these applications that we rely actually have this big flaw where if you get disconnected from the backbone, if your Wi-Fi goes down or if some cloud server goes down, all of those services are gone, right? And so we have seen multiple scenarios where this has happened, causing like this destroying a lot of business value, but also in situations where there are mission critical applications when there is a natural disaster. Like it's not good that like literally when you need the most, like it's when you don't have access to this critical infrastructure. And one of the reasons why this happens is because this design decision that was made at the time with very good intentions and like in a way to provide some platform for people to build upon, but ultimately is flawed, which is this location addressing. Like when you are looking for a piece of content, even though you might have the content or a neighbor might have the content, you still need to go back to the server. And if one of the hops is cut, you cannot access it anymore. And so, and this is like the distributed web, and it's a project or it's a need that the IPFS project tackles head on because it's designed to tackle all of these scenarios where you are disconnected, where you are offline, when there is problems of permanence or security in the network. And so IPFS comes to offer the distributed web and like to really make a big bet on enabling people to serve content from their own machines. And so and the trick and how it does it, because it changes the game from location addressing to content addressing, where you change from saying that some file is in some location to saying that you are looking for like a cryptographic fingerprint of a file. What this enables is a multitude of applications, from developer tools, code sharing tools, community networks, education platforms that now can collaborate with each other without relying on a centralized provider that can fail. So there's like a very vibrant ecosystem just building on top of the distributed web. And this is like one of the verticals, as I said. The other one is really like the blockchain, or a more human understandable, maybe not as much, but like publicly and verifiable ledgers. Basically a public record that can be verified by anyone of some statement that is all true for everyone that follows that public record. And so what is happening in the blockchain? And so as you said, like things have been going for a while, so like for more than a decade now, and we see a huge adoption and a huge growth in these networks. Here we can see kind of like this exponential curve of the Bitcoin hash rate, and that is just like a proxy metric for the amount of capital and the amount of attention, the amount of eyeballs that has been deposited to one of these networks. And what the blockchain really enables us is to have things such as programmable law, programmable financial instruments, programmable organizations, and programmable services. And I have examples for a few of them. And so with programmable law and programmable organizations, it means that rather than trusting in a piece of paper, a contract, a notary service that sits in some physical address somewhere in some country, you can actually write code that embeds the spirit of a contract and have the multiple parties exchange information and sign an agreement over this contract. And if there is some violation of the contract, you can activate the function on this code that that respects in case of a violation of a contract. What this has enabled, and so just focusing even more on your question, what this has enabled is this new type of organizations, of these new type of corporate forms called the decentralized autonomous organizations, that you can, like, one way to think of it is like these programmable corporate structures that are transversal to every jurisdiction. So they are not registered in any physical address. They are not in any single country. For what it's worth, their jurisdiction is the internet, because they live online. They are virtualized. And again, like with any kind of new technology, any kind of new platform, there's always a plethora of new use cases. And I have a few remarkable examples, just like, I guess, to illustrate of what is possible. One of these investment products and also decentralized autonomous organizations is this network called Year Finance. And Year Finance is kind of like a robo-advisor now, to put it simply. It creates financial products, strategies, kind of like indexes, investment strategies, and so on. And you as a client can decide and go there and deposit your tokens, your capital, to take part on the appreciation of those investment products. And the way that this organization works is that, like, all decisions from the creation of new products to the utilization of funds in the treasury of the DAO, for example, to hire people to pay for further development and so on, all gets done in a decentralized way. Why is this important? Like, because effectively there is no office, no front desk, no customer support. Like, all is done in a centralized way, powered by smart contracts, and like everyone is having their dialogue online. And this has been such a powerful and successful use case that, like, in a bit less than a year, like this DAO, so like effectively this wealth management firm, comparing to the real world, had more than $2 billion in total value locked, generating a very significant profit, and having all of its coordination happen in a decentralized and even pseudonymous way. Like, yeah, they had all kinds of developers and like other like people doing operations. They had a very sophisticated org structure already for a decentralized autonomous organization. And they had like full transparency and financial reports that anyone could engage with and anyone could see and anyone could contest. Another great example of like what is happening in this decentralized world and Web3 world is new ways to fund research. So typically this has been very limited access to any kind of investor or any kind of person that like was not part of like a large fund or a large institution. And VitaDAO, for example, is democratizing access to big pharma and like life sciences research by creating a community, a cooperative like structure where they invest in the research. And once there is some IP, some patent or some other artifacts, they license that IP to big pharma. And then as the royalties come in, they distribute those returns through the VitaDAO token holders and participants, which then get to decide which new projects get to fund. And so this is creating like a very vibrant community that, again, anyone can join their chat rooms, anyone can discuss, anyone can participate in multiple ways, from contributing to docs, to visuals, to evaluating projects. That there's like a plethora of ways to contribute there. And it's a very remarkable example as well. Maybe one more, but I don't know if you have any questions on these examples, Carlos, or if you like me to explain even more.
No, keep going.
So this other one, which I really love because, well, of course I'm biased. It's one I get to work on every day. Is it's an example of a verifiable market, right? So a verifiable market is one where you don't need terms of service. You don't need to take anyone to court, because you don't even need the third-party mediators, because all of that is embedded on the spirit of the network and on the tokenomics of the network. So this example that I'm giving here is Falcoin. And Falcoin, as I said, like it is the persistence layer for IPFS, and it's a crypto token incentivized file storage network that puts available storage, latent potential, right? Latent storage available out there to rent. And so it can be seen as like a either the Airbnb for storage, or if you could pay for Amazon S3 services with Bitcoin, but it's actually a little bit more than that. It is a network that incentivizes the storage providers to provide the storage capacity to the clients and to remain well behaved, i.e. don't delete the files, not stop serving the files, etc. Because there is like a two-party handshake where the providers need to put some collateral in case of like if they are misbehaved, and the clients need to put the payment on a smart contract. And as the provider demonstrates that they are providing the file correctly, they get paid. So that's a streaming payment rather than a one-time thing. And if the provider ends up failing to deliver the service, their collateral that they put in advance gets slashed, and therefore they get a penalty. And the intent is not for them to get slashed or to get a penalty. The intent is for them to remain well-behaved and like do their best effort to offer a really high quality service. And so thanks to these primitives and thanks to these principles, it is possible to have these verified exchange of values where I pay only if my file is being stored correctly and if I can access it. And if in case of malicious behavior or just a faulty behavior, there's a way to claim back I don't want to call it a reward, but like kind of like a fee out of that faulty behavior without having to record to terms of service and recurring for clauses. And this is so powerful that Falcoin, although like IPFS is a more mature network, it has been going since 2015, but Falcoin was only launched 2020, so still less than 2 years old. Last 1 year anniversary was last quarter. It already has like 15 exabytes and over 38,000 storage providers with tens of thousands of developers who are building applications on top. And like maybe the number that will be mind-blowing to everyone is that like storing a file on Falcoin or in the Falcoin network is 0.01% of Amazon's S3 solution, right? So it's really remarkably cheaper, and that is because it is basically grabbing all of this latent storage potential that existed or like was already in people's machines and people's data centers, and creating an incentive layer that like encourages everyone to provide that capacity in a market that is very hands-free. Like you just have to turn it on and the protocol does all the work. You don't need to have sales reps. You don't have to have marketing. It's just like all on a protocol. So hopefully, at least I hope that some people at home get mind blown by this or what is possible. But yeah, like there's like so much more. Like give me 2 weeks and maybe I get to cover 1% of everything that is happening on Web3.
Unfortunately, today we don't have 2 weeks, but maybe next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Just before going into the kind of more broader challenges that are facing Web3, just to dig a little bit deeper into the DAOs. I mean, the DAOs end up being sociological organizations on top of a technological framework. Looking at the technological side of it, what do you see are kind of the main challenges and opportunities within the DAO infrastructure? So what do you see as kind of being those problems that still need to be overcome in order for DAOs to be more powerful, more efficient, and so on?
Absolutely. So on the technological side, like one of the things that is remarkable is that when there is a need, there is like someone to build it. Like and because ultimately it's like these environments are highly collaborative, like and welcoming. Like as long as there is a reward or an incentive, there will be multiple experiments. And so what we see right now is like all kinds of startups, all kinds of initiatives, all kinds of individuals building tools to enable DAO coordination to become simpler, right? And so right now, one of the main challenges that like is being worked on is that the majority of DAOs follow the rule of the largest, like the largest token holders are the ones that get the higher power of vote. What it means, like it creates this capitalistic decision-making structure where the wealthiest get to make the decisions, while like even if the long tail of token holders are actually the majority of the token holders, they might not have as much power as a small percentage of the actual humans in the group. So changing from token voting to like democratic voting or elected democracy voting or mandates. So like when I showed the yearn finance, like you can see like there's already subcommittees designed and elected for a term to make certain decisions, to make decisions more efficient. And while the whole set of the token holders get still to make decisions about like who to elect and like who to decommission and so on. And so this kind of tooling on decision making, on reward, right? Because then people contribute at different capacity at different times. So there's a lot of tooling being developed for payroll, like the simple thing of payroll. Even contract management, like it's like a lot of this work gets done ad hoc, like bounty based, like I'll pay X to someone that does Y. And so coordinating bounties, evaluating the impact, making sure that the system doesn't get too complex too quickly, where it creates friction for people to join. These are all like technological challenges that are kind of like the UX problems of the DAOs, right? And so this needs to be solved. Then there are other problems, right? Ultimately, in order for these organizations to be recognized and to be accessible to every single human in the planet, there needs to be some kind of integration with the existing corporate frameworks and existing like legal and tax of every single jurisdiction. And so although there's like some jurisdictions that are pioneering and trailblazing and like really welcoming the incorporation of this structure so that they can be fully compliant and like they have an entry point to the, let's call it the physical world markets, right? Like to export, import goods, employ people directly, pay social security, all kind of that stuff. Some jurisdictions are still like lagging behind, still trying to figure out like what all of this means. And so this is like one of the big challenges as well. Like a lot of, there's this beautiful Gitcoin DAO report that interviews more than 300 DAOs. And one of the top pain points was how to employ people in a compliant way, because everyone wants, but there is no clarity, or not everywhere. And so, but like there's a lot of experimentation, and so and a lot of dialogue and open dialogue, which transparency is a big component of all of this. Is like people actually get to participate, shape, and understand, so that like the structures fit what is needed.
Awesome, fantastic, thank you. So. I think we can agree that when we're talking about the Web3, these are still kind of very early days. There are still significant challenges that need to be overcome for the Web3 to become kind of a mainstream paradigm. What do you see those challenges being?
Well, the number one, and you can ask this to any group, the number one challenge in Web3 is the talent scarcity. Like we live in a world where the ideas are there, the business opportunities are there, the capital is there. Right? Like we see more and more funds getting created, more and more capital getting onboarded to Web3. Yet the reality is like the way it feels like it's the early days of the web, both in terms of like tools and people. Like not everyone really got what the web was about in the beginning. Not everyone was working on the web. And so we need to create, or we need to encourage, create, facilitate this huge talent inflow, either working directly with universities, working directly with the training programs, helping large institutions on board into Web3 so that they can use their own internal training structures to train more talent so that more people are versed in these technologies. And then the other thing is, well, one of the reasons is lack of people. The other is the tools are too hard. Like the amount of concepts that are required from peer-to-peer, and like the standard web developer like is used to like a lot of really nice tools that exist already because they've been developed for the last 20 years, and they can set up a website, have authentication, have a shopping cart, like have some distribution center, like start selling some goods, and maybe in a week they have like a successful business. But in Web3, it requires you to think again about authorization, accounting, billing, well, all the things that we already discussed, like the typical day-to-day of running an organization, like employing, recruiting, and so like for the developers, like data management, right? Like, where is my data? Like, can I audit it? Can I? Is it following all the regulations it needs to follow for the type of data that it is? There's just like a lot of tooling, a lot of capabilities that is not there. Or, well, there's a lot of already very exciting projects that are like trailblazing and demonstrating how there are actually better primitives to do all of these things that I just mentioned. But you know, like it's a little bit rough in the edges, and so it takes a little bit to onboard people. And then on top of that, the debuggability, right? Like understanding when something fails, why did it fail? It's harder when you are operating over a decentralized network that you don't control the machines. So it then comes down to creating like very good economic structures to incentivize people to behave well and to like to follow the spirits of the contracts and the desire that was put into when they built the platform. So again, it's a panoply of things that all need to be interweaved. It's more than just like launching that website and getting some user adoption, some signups. It's really thinking, okay, where do I announce this? How do my users sign up? how do they get to sign up for a subscription if I want to have one? Like these bits are still not there, and so what this means is like it's just like this golden opportunity for builders, because they can port a lot of their ideas, a lot of the things that they know from Web 2.0 world, and just come and build it on with Web 3 primitives.
You mentioned a lot has to do with kind of providing developers with the right tooling to allow them to kind of develop the new stuff and address other more deep problems. Assuming that they have the tooling, which is a huge assumption, as you've mentioned. So that's certainly an area that needs a lot more development time. But assuming that, what are the other kind of technical problems, both at the network level, in terms of new applications? What do you see as also opportunities within this space?
Yeah, like ultimately, it really depends on what people are trying to do, right? And so right now, for people that are more versed into Web3, they might read a lot about the layer 1 versus the layer 2s versus sharding, not sharding. And so there's a lot of like still hard technical distributed systems problems more than just like product development. Like still a lot of the hardcore systems engineering, architecture design, software architecture design problems that need to be figured out. Although there's like very good trajectory, a great roadmap to read where things are going is the Ethereum roadmap that got published last month, and then what is being tried to figure out is ultimately how can we scale not to millions of users, but to 7 billion users plus, in a way that provides the same level of convenience and reliability that people are used to today, right? Because the end user, at the end of the day, like not everyone will care if it's decentralized, if it's a censorship resistance, if it's dollar or euro or Bitcoin, Falcoin, Ethereum. Like they don't care. They just want to get their salary, to enjoy time with friends and family, and to have good food and so on. And so for them, it's really important that like all these things are integrated in such a way that like when they go to pay for their meal, like their coffee, like it's instant. Like they don't have to wait for how many confirmations of whatever network they provide. At the same time, it's also important that we don't take shortcuts, right? What happened ultimately with Web 2 was a series of shortcuts put us in a position where we no longer had control over, like we did no longer have sovereignty over our own data, where things were going, like who had access, who had control over what I get to do or what not get to do. And so it's important as we build these systems that we don't take the shortcut of like just spinning a bunch of machines on some cloud provider and calling it a blockchain and then selling it as like a highly scalable transaction service, because effectively what they did was just have a database with extra steps. It's not really centralized, not really resilient. So the big challenge there. Other thing is like the kind of primitives that we want to bring to the world of Web3. Like I mentioned, privacy preserving primitives before. That's like, depending on where you come from, like that's really important for the future of humanity, for the future of society, and for people to continue to have free speech, right? Like it's important that people can read and write without being censored or without being spied on. And those primitives are incredibly hard to pull off, because depending on the layer that you're operating from application, like you can have end-to-end encryption, but if you have a sophisticated actor, like a state actor that can spy on every single IP packet, right? Like any single network packet, then that they can totally like side channel attack you and like know who you're talking with and like how active you are in certain places, and like create a profile of you anyway. So that's a very important as well. And so it is like really like the whole order of Web3, from like the distributed web to the blockchain to the usability to the product. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot of experimentation, and the beautiful thing is, because it's so permissionless and there is so much energy, and like anyone from the world can join. Like you don't have to be in a specific, you don't have to relocate to CTX to participate. Then things move fast. Like I experienced this myself, and everyone I talk with is they tell me, well, like I stopped following the Discord for 3 days and I have no idea anymore because like so much happened. And yes, it's moving that fast. Like and we see, like, I guess ultimately it's good to take a large breather, like just absorb everything, but at some point just like focus on one problem and really own it end to end, and then go to the next one. Otherwise, yeah, it can feel overwhelming. Well, I guess it's like a small advice, of course. Like people feel free to do whatever they want.
Definitely. So, I mean, the Web3 is, as we discussed, faced with significant challenges, but it's also ripe with opportunities. For the people listening to us who would like to be a part of it, who would like to also contribute, who would like to build, how can you go about it? How can you get started, and where can they learn from?
Yeah, and so, well, there are really many great ways to join. And as I've said, like this is like a hyper collaborative space. And so what this means in practice is like, instead of like being a zero sum where there's like a single cake, and like in order for my slice of the cake to be bigger, yours needs to get smaller. Like there is like a win and help win mindset, because instead of like trying to shrink your slice of the cake, I'm just going to make the cake bigger for everyone, right? And so if the cake is bigger, then it's exponential growth for everyone. And so rather than competing, we collaborate. The space is also incredibly nascent. And so it's very easy to onboard to a new project and really take an active role, because they will always, as I said, like talent is scarce. So anyone that shows with a pair of extra hands or like whatever, however you can help, people will welcome you and onboard you. Nowadays, there's like a series of websites, like documentations. Like if you are a builder, the best is like pick a couple of projects and try to build a small app with it. Just see where the rough edges are, and then like contribute to smooth those rough edges. If you are a product person or a design, like look for projects that you believe that are really good, but like they still don't get the charisma, the attention that they deserve, and help those teams figure out how to reach out. Or even better is to join hackathons. Hackathons are happening a lot, and there's all kinds of hackathons happening. And the better ones are where there's actually a support program, a support organization that is like there providing you with mentors and providing with people that can handheld you through your journey into Web3. And I believe this is why we are here today, right? Like there's a hackathon happening soon.
Definitely, and I'm gonna take your lead.
All right,
and talk a little bit about what we are doing with you guys. We're very excited to be collaborating collaborating with Protocol Labs and organizing this hackathon and then an accelerator program. So let me go right into it and talk a little bit about what's the Faber Web3 hackathon. Just set things up here. So let me start by talking a little bit about Faber, who we are and what we do and how we do it. So Faber is a leading micro VC based out of Portugal. We've been investing in some of the top startups coming out of Southern Europe since 2013. Startups like Unbabel, Courtesy, Sword Health, or Cedars. We're a team of ex-entrepreneurs, operators, who like working closely with the founders of early stage companies from pre-seed to Series A. We tend to be very hands-on in terms of helping the companies get to a very successful Series A and internationalization strategy, and then going from there to become global organizations. We like deep tech powered products that can offer distinctive and disruptive solutions to large industries. We tend to like to focus on specific things and go deep in terms of specialization. For that, we have set up dedicated specialist teams, and we surround ourselves also with team-specific expert advisory networks that not only help us evaluate new potential investments, but also operate as mentors, advisors to our portfolio companies. These are people from diverse backgrounds, from academia to entrepreneurs to technical experts and industry leaders. And they help us operate in the intersection between science and technology. We started with a deep focus in AI data and have now expanded to climate ocean tech, as well as deepened our focus on Web3, which was before part of the AI data theme. So talking a little bit more about the hackathon. So the Faber Web3 hackathon is a 1 month virtual event run in collaboration with Protocol Labs, as David mentioned. We are looking for talented teams working on solving hard engineering problems for the Web3. As I mentioned before, we like deep tech founders. We like deep tech teams addressing deep tech problems. We're looking for people that want to build new protocols, new tools, new infrastructure services, applications, using either directly or indirectly Falcoin and/or IPFS. It's up to you to decide on any Web3 use case. During the opening of the hackathon, we're going to give you some ideas of projects that you can kind of develop. But as I said, we like deep tech problems and we like teams with strong technical skills. So why should you apply to the Faber Web3 hackathon? So first of all, because of the institutions backing the hackathon. I've already talked a little bit about Faber. We're fortunate enough to be based out of Portugal, which is a fast-growing hub for Web3 talent. We're getting more and more people coming from all parts of the world, relocating to Portugal to develop new decentralized applications. And Protocol Labs, which David has already introduced, who have been collaborating with a curated community of partners such as Outlier Ventures in UK, Long Hash Ventures in Asia, Techstars in the US, and now Faber in Europe. Together, we want to continue the mission of helping form, fund, and accelerate new companies working on blockchain technologies. At heart of this mission is the Faber Web3 Hackathon, and I'll give a little bit more details on it in the next few slides, and the Filecoin Faber Acceleration Program. The hackathon is built on the combined experience of Faber and Protocol Labs, and as a participant, you're going to have access to an invaluable range of resources that will help you build the best possible project that you can build. And then you also have prizes, of course. So we are awarding more than 75,000 euros in prizes, distributed between the three first places. But also we've reserved 15,000 euros that is going to be split by all valid submissions. We want to make sure that if you submit a valid project, then your time is not wasted. You're still going to get something. On top of that, we're also awarding 3 business awards of 5,000 euros each. These awards were made to distinguish the projects that are more likely to become successful businesses in the future, and that we want to try to help become successful businesses. So with that, there's the opportunity to be fast-tracked for the Falcoin Faber Accelerator. And what is a Falcoin Faber Accelerator? So the Falcoin Faber Accelerator is going to be a 3-month virtual accelerator program running from mid-April to mid-July. We have at least 800,000 euros of investment co-invested by Faber and Protocol Labs that is going to be split by 10 teams. We're also going to have a demo day with some of the top Web3 venture capital investors in the world, one-to-one sessions with a wide network of some of the top mentors and advisors in the space. And during the accelerator program, you're going to be supplied with supporting areas like tokenomics, the legals of setting up whatever you're setting up, Web3 development, security, which is really important when you're talking about distributed and public applications, UI, UX, go-to-market strategies, recruitment, and fundraising, among others. So you're going to have a lot of support to go from kind of just the initial prototype or the initial product to having the beginnings of a business and to launching a business. That's what we want to support you with. But back to the hackathon, which is what we're talking about here today. There's going to be more information on the accelerator within the next few weeks. Going back to the hackathon is going to start with an opening event in February 17th, and then the second day on February 18th. It's going to be 2 days of talks, panels, workshops that will not only help you with the technical aspects of developing a Web3 application, but also provide you with an overview of some of the main areas and main topics within the decentralized web, help you build teams and set up teams to develop your project, but also give you some ideas of potential projects that you may want to develop. Submissions close in March 18th. And we're going to do a pre-selection of the top 10 teams that will be presented to our jury, who will then select the winners. And registrations are already open. So you can go to faberweb3.devpost.com and you can register there. You can see all the information about the hackathon. And if you have any questions, feel free to head to our hackathon support channel on the Faber Discord server. You can also, before the beginning of the hackathon, start learning about Falcoin and IPFS. You have some of links here. You're going to have the links linked from this video as well. Let us help you build the future of the decentralized web. We're very excited to see what you guys come up with. And we at Faber are going to do everything we can to support you on that road. So that's it on the hackathon. David, thank you very much for joining me here today. It was a really interesting conversation about the Web3. I hope I hope you'll join us for the hackathon as well as one of the speakers. And very excited about the next few weeks. Very excited about the next few months. For anyone watching us, head out to the URL that I've just shown you, faberweb3.devpost.com. Check out the hackathon and register. We're very excited to kind of see what you guys come up in terms of projects. So thank you very much. Thank you, David.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was great fun. And I really look forward to meet everyone that goes to the hackathon. Like I'll be there participating on the kickoff event, but also throughout the program, like to help with any questions. Feel free to shoot me questions about IPFS, peer-to-peer, IPLD, any of the protocols really. And yeah, like looking forward to see you all. And I would say like it's time to build. There's a lot to build. And well, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I wish everyone a great fun at the hackathon.
Thank you.